'Tis the season, and I don't necessarily mean the holiday season here on Mic Drop, brought to you by Believe Network, the Believe Network, and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on SiriusXM. I'm Mike Asti, and 'tis the season to discuss Hall of Fame ballots. As you may have seen all over social media, many of the Baseball Hall of Fame voters are now releasing their ballots and who they voted for. And to give them all credit, they're making them public, making them public every year. Gotta like that, which means we can discuss it here on this show. We'll also talk some Steelers here on the back half of the program, and then maybe get back into this and have more Hall of Fame talk after the results are announced at the end of January. But again, Mike Asti here, Mic Drop on Believe and SiriusXM. And I have one of those voters joining me here on the show who released his ballot just actually a few hours ago from when we're recording this. I asked him if he could be on, and then he probably thought to himself, I probably should actually release this to everybody and not just give it to Mike. I could have released it here, but you did it on your own, no problem. Will Graves of the Associated Press. We're going to get into his ballot. We've actually been doing this almost on an annual basis, and then obviously Will covering the Pittsburgh sports scene for the AP, so we'll get into some Steelers talk, probably maybe some Fenway Sports Group sale of the Penguins, maybe some of that depending on our time here. But Will, how you doing, man? How's the holiday season treating you? And how many people are in your mentions and replies and comments right now since you released your ballot?
Hey, Mike, happy holidays to you and your family. Thanks for having me on. Everything's fine. I got teenagers now. I got a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and it almost feels like you're not there yet. You're still in this sort of special time.
Yeah.
I think my kids would be fine if we just cut them a check and everybody slept in on Christmas. And I mean, like, that's sort of the way that it goes.
Okay.
But I think I don't know. I think I'm kind of giving them a hard time. I think the kids they're probably a little more kind-hearted than I give them credit for. But it's going well, and I'm actually sort of relieved. It's been real busy lately, and I'm looking forward to sort of a quiet stretch next week to enjoy at least a couple of days with my family. But yeah, as far as Hall of Fame goes, we get the ballots mailed to us the week after Thanksgiving. They're due December 31st. I kind of knew this. This is my fifth year voting. The first 4 years, it kind of took me until the last couple of days to kind of get to the end of the road. But like, I had studied up this time, and I kind of knew there was no Ichiro on this ballot. There was no CC Sabathia on this ballot.
Yeah. There
really wasn't anybody that deserved, in my opinion, serious first year consideration. And I kind of knew who I was, I had two holdovers last year for my ballot that didn't get in. Last year I voted for five guys. I voted for Ichiro, Sabathia, Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones, and Carlos Beltran, and this year only Jones and Beltran made my ballot. And to be honest with you, the response has been like, I don't think people have not. There hasn't been much vitriol yet, and I don't think there will be, because I don't think out of this group,
right,
I don't think people are going to have an issue with like the two best players in that group being voted into the Hall of Fame, right? So the pushback, the minimal pushback I've gotten so far is just, why do I not include more players? But look, my threshold's really high, and there's a lot of, and as I noted in my explainer on my professional Facebook page, that like there's a lot of easing of standards in society in a lot of places, and I'm sort of fine not doing that with my Hall of Fame ballot.
Yeah, it's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of everyone. It's not the Hall of very good. It's not even, well, it's the Hall of Fame, but it's not even just the Hall of recognition. So, you could argue whether Hall of Fame kind of is that. But no, I like it being exclusive for sure. Again, Will Graves here, Mic Drop with Believe in SiriusXM. And yeah, I went to my daughter's little Christmas party with her preschool / daycare class, and she was singing and dancing with them. And then she told me, because there were different moments where she kind of got really quiet and shy and just stopped doing everything. And she later said that it was when I was smiling at her. She'd rather me not look at her. So we're already in the stage where she would rather perform with no one there, which I kind of was like as a kid, actually, as well, in Little League and everything else. But we're very much in the swing of Christmas here. A 3-year-old and a 6-month-old about to experience her first Christmas. So we are full on believing, which does make it nice. We'll see how long that lasts. But to get away from all the touchy-feely of my personal life, we'll get into the Hall of Fame ballot, where the conversation there is anything but. And I do think your ballot is probably not going to get you as much vitriol as maybe some of the other voters' ballots. We don't have to necessarily call them out here, but as
I'll do it. No, I mean, I'll do it. You
Okay.
you even texted me about it last
I
night.
did.
It was funny. A good friend of mine, longtime AP Philly sports writer, Dan Gelson. He's been in Philly for probably 20
his is
years.
one. Yes.
And he voted exclusively for Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley, as he did 2 years ago. Last year, he did vote for Ichiro. He did vote for Sabathia.
Which
it's
makes
weird.
sense. Yeah.
It's weird that he didn't get there on Wagner, but that's, neither here nor there. But he's getting a lot of smoke for it. Unlike me, he does not post an explainer. He explains to me, but I'm not going to speak for him. That's I think he sort of enjoys, I kind of texted him the gif of the Batman movie where the Joker like blows up the hospital, like he's walking away and it's blowing up behind him. Like that's what Dan does with his Hall of Fame ballot. Look, but it's not a troll ballot. Like this is what he believes.
Okay.
And I think there's 300, there's probably almost 400 voters. I think we're up in the high threes. It's way down. It used to be up 750 plus. The BBWA has culled the field here a little bit. And each year, like started covering the Pirates in 2011. I got my writer's card the next year, and I think I'm number 239, which is in the lower half of the field, I think. So
there were years where people that had retired or no longer on beats were actually still voting, and that seemed a little bit ridiculous. So they did whittle that down.
I appreciate the passion people have for this, and I try to I treat the process respectfully. And look, all I'm trying to do year over year is to have like a logical through line. Right. And I think 5 years in, I think I've pretty much stuck to my guns. And like on my first ballot in 21, I said, look, I'm a small hog guy. And I think I'm still there. The idea of, we have some people that vote for really learned, really great people, baseball people I respect, who have 8-10 guys on their ballots every year. And that's good for them. That's their process. And mine is just like, and maybe I need to adjust this as we get older, but like, I don't know how you feel about it, but when I think about the Hall of Fame, I don't think about like the guys that just got across the line, right? I think about, Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and Cal Ripken Jr., the greats of the greats. And maybe I need to lower my standards a little bit, but the reality is, look, it's going to get thornier and thornier because the thresholds that we so closely associate with Hall of Famers, 3,000 hits, 500 homers,
it's not
300 wins, whatever. Like those things are going to become increasingly rare. So then, and careers are going to be, it's weird.
And the evaluation's been different too. We've seen a lot, and I personally do like this as younger than you. In terms of that mentality, we've seen a lot in the last decade where, especially for pitchers, that 300 win bar is gone. I mean, they're putting in people with 220 some wins, even below that. And if they feel like they're elite enough, the Pedro Martinez's of the world, etc., that win bar is gone. CeCe, you mentioned, first ballot only got to 250, so did not even get to 300. So the bars are kind of coming down in terms of the threshold that we grew up with.
Right.
I mean, when I was a kid in the 90s, if you didn't have 500 home runs as an outfielder and you didn't have 300 wins as a pitcher, you didn't even get considered. Now you're walking in the door. And part of it could be that if you're not voting in the steroid guys, which we'll get to later, they're opening up room for to kind of bring those milestones down.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is athletes, the big game has never been better in terms of the quality of players, the quality of athletes playing baseball, right? I mean, like it's just like it is with every other sport, because like it's not like these guys go and sell insurance in the off season, right? I mean, they're in shape the second they get there. So like, but the irony is that some of these careers are like Dustin Pedroia, Felix Hernandez, Johan Santana, for example. I mean, these are guys that, probably, like it's, and Santana's off the ballot. Like he's not going to get in, but we have to sort of like consider going forward, like they're in better shape than ever, but they don't, they're not going to play forever. So like next year, Buster Posey is going to be a first year. He'll be his first year on the ballot. He played 12 years.
Athletes don't even want to play forever these days. They want to do other things in their life. They want to go into business. They want to be there with their family. These athletes who are Hall of Fame caliber, they are shutting it down. After a decade is kind of all they want to do.
And it makes it really tough. Like it makes it, if I vote for Buster Posey next year, which I'm probably going to do, he has 1,500 career hits. 1,500.
Yeah,
you
know,
his resume is great. Rookie of the Year,
100%.
MVP, 3-time World Series champion, a batting title. Like, I mean, he's got the resume to be a Hall of Famer, but Pedroia's at 1,850 hits. He's a World Series champion. He's an MVP. Do I have to switch there? Utley is sort of definitely in that mix. King Felix is definitely sort of in that group in terms of the quality, the maybe the shortness of the peak. But do we have to start rewarding that peak maybe a little bit more? I'm still sort of a longevity guy. I mean, that was one of the reasons I voted for Wagner. I think anybody can close. I mean, heck, I cover the Pirates. They have an all-star closer almost every year, right? But it's almost always a different guy. Whereas, I mean, Wagner was an all-star when he was 23, and he was an all-star when he was 38. I mean, when you do that, when you have that sort of success in that position for a long time. So I value longevity, but the reality
is, I mean, that's how it used to.
It's going to be tough going forward.
Yeah, it used to be like that, and it does make you wonder how certain current guys are going to be treated who are really just longevity guys but don't have the individual greatness in terms of individual seasons. Because when you're talking about Billy Wagner, I mean, Kenley Jansen is right up there, top 5 all-time in saves. It's going to be a very similar case, and he's not shutting it down. He's going to probably get over 500 saves. You look at Chapman, he's going to be right up there in terms of consideration. I do think, and I'm not necessarily against Wagner being in, but Wagner's opening up the door for a lot more relievers that are pitching today, because it's going to be really tough to say Jansen and Chapman do not get the vote. And you have Wagner sitting in there, and Wagner wasn't on a dynasty. He doesn't have, individual seasons. You could argue other closers were still better than him in that era, but his totality brought him there, and that's going to potentially bring a lot of other guys there. So as you did open up the show, if you want a smaller haul, it might not be that way in the next decade, next 20 years. The door might open up. But Will Graves again joining me here as we're talking his Hall of Fame ballot here on Mike Drop. Mike Asti,
and I'll just bring up, you mentioned the pitchers. I'll just bring up one. There's a burgeoning, and I mentioned in my explainer because I've seen it. There's a burgeoning. What about Bobby Abreu? If you look at his numbers, almost 2,500 hits, 400 stolen bases.
I made a joke actually to a mutual friend of ours that after I texted you about Dan's ballot with the 2 Phillies, it's funny that he left off Abreu, because obviously Abreu has the Philly connection. I think he's a borderline guy, but that's just interesting to me.
But that's a guy that played at a high level for a long time. But sort of one of the reasonings, I say is I try to adjust my philosophy. It's do I have to go from thinking about these players as the greatest of all time to just the greatest of their time? And if I use that metric for Abreu, 2 all-star appearances, which seems really low for a guy with those numbers. And I went and looked at the years he didn't make it when he batted over 300, and he was getting pushed out by guys like Jeff Jenkins and Rondell White for all-star games. I mean, that means even his peers, and I understand there are other things there. Maybe those guys were Preston Wilson made it one year. The Rockies were terrible this year, but they needed to have a guy in the game, right? So I understand that part of it, but he wasn't, he couldn't crack, he never finished in the top 10 in MVP voting. A great, a really, really good player, but I would vote for Andrew McCutchen ahead of him. I would.
We'll get into that because I know that we actually talked about that in the past show, and that'll be a whole nother debate. And it was a debate last year. You kind of started in Pittsburgh, and we'll see here into the future, but we'll get into that a little bit. Again, Will Graves on Mic Drop. Now, you mentioned that you voted for Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones. For me, I think they're going to be the only 2 guys. We can debate who are voting for. I would predict that those are the 2 that are going to get in. They're going to push over the line based on where they were, and they're also very similar cases. I would imagine nobody else would get in. You kind of detailed on why the 2 of them a little bit in your write-up, but just separate from everybody else, do you agree with that? Do you think these are going to be the 2 guys that push over the line? Why these 2 guys? And do you also agree with my sentiment that they almost got to be paired together? Because I've seen some voters voting for one and not the other, and I kind of find it hard to imagine voting for one, not the other. They're very similar players. I mean, Gold Gloves, offense, defense, similar era. They're very, very similar.
I mean, they are similar. I mean, I would think that Beltran was sort of more of the steady Eddie out of the 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
I could see
the fall off. I mean, like the reason I didn't vote for Jones the first
seems
3
like
years,
Jones is getting more votes than Beltran though, from what we're seeing on release ballots.
I didn't vote for Jones the first 3 years.
Okay.
That I had to vote because the last 6 years of his career it's not that they were bad, they were so bad. And he was getting paid a lot of money to be really bad. And it was just took me. But when you look over those first 10, I guess over the course as we get distance from the end of his career, when I think about him as a player, I think about him as a 19-year-old, in that 96 Braves team, and like, oh my God, who is this kid? Right.
Yeah.
I just really, those 10 years eventually wore me down. And look, he was a great offensive player and a great defensive player at his peak. I mean, he was the full package. And Beltran, it's interesting, with Beltran, when I think of him, unfortunately, I think of two things. And I mentioned this in my explanation. I think about the Astros cheating thing, which was stupid and unnecessary, but also if you zoom out, is sort of like baseball, there has been sort of this gamesmanship, you can call it cheating, whatever, since the game began, like since the first spitball, right? I mean, guys, that's just the way it's sort of like NASCAR. Like what do they say? If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, right? It's sort of like that. I'm not saying that everybody in baseball is trying to cheat, but look, everybody's always searching for an edge. So that was sucked. And then I think about him watching against the Cardinals in the NLCS, and I can't remember if it was 07 or 11, but like watching with like the tying run on base, watching 3 pitches go by and not swinging at any of them in the season ending, right? But I gave a talk in Pittsburgh to their Sabre community at the History Center in November, and really fun discussion. And I admitted that look, we don't have video of Willie Mays striking out in critical situations. We don't have video of Mickey Mantle striking out in critical situations. But unfortunately,
they did though.
No, they did, right?
Yeah,
so, but it's not as immediate, right? It's sort of just lost to history. Whereas these guys, their failures are right in front of us all the time.
100%.
So I realized that maybe I wasn't being fair to Beltran and when you look at how good he was for how long he was good and all the things he could do on a baseball field. I just
the walk-off homer in the playoffs may cancel that out too.
So like an excellent, worthy Hall of Famer, and I would imagine these two guys get in it. And the rest of the ballot, look, this year is again, and we're going to have these discussions more and more. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be no doubters in the next decade. I mean, there's going to be, Verlander and Scherzer and Kershaw and and Ohtani whenever that happens. Trout, Pujols. Yadi Molina, I'm assuming, will be a first-year guy.
Yeah, Pujols is coming up. Yeah,
but after that, like it's going to get. I mean, it's pretty threadbare. It's just, and part of it is it's interesting because
you're going to get into what I said. Then you're going to get into the Kenley Jansens of the world and the Chapmans of the world. They're both in their late 30s. Right. That's when they're going to come up. Yeah,
and what's the line between Hall of Very Good and Hall of Fame? And it's super thin. But I do think that these two guys. I'm not a big it's their turn guy. But I just think
it is their turn.
It sort of is, right? I mean, like when you couldn't the way sort of part of my methodology is like if I'm going to delineate between good and great and all-time great, like it's probably going to be, are you going to get my vote the first time, right? Like, and then maybe you get my vote the second time. And that's sort of what I did with Beltran, right? I thought the cheating stuff did not allow him, like you can't get in, because when people say that, when we talk about Hall of Famers, what do we talk about? We don't there's Hall of Famers and then there's first ballot Hall of Famers, right? And I'm fine drawing a line even among the greats. So baseball
cares about that more than any other sport. I mean, I have percentages memorized on what certain guys got, and there's always the debate, and some fans get annoyed with that even mentality because a guy like Babe Ruth didn't get 100% of the vote. A guy like Willie Mays didn't get 100% of the vote. Hank Aaron didn't get 100% of the vote. We didn't actually start giving 100% of the vote until very recently, and with Mariano Rivera. Right. So there are people that think that's crazy, that they're just everyone.
Somebody didn't vote for Ichiro last year, and then that coward didn't even make their vote public. And that to me, that undermines the process. That all the vitriol me and my colleagues might get.
Someone didn't vote for Ichiro. There were 3 people that didn't vote for Ken Griffey Jr., and I believe 2 of the 3 made their vote public, and 1 did not. And it's again, what are we doing here? Especially when there's no real scandal or no character issue. What are we doing here? And the explanation that I have heard one of the guys who didn't vote for Griffey did give is because he's somebody that wants to vote 10 people on his ballot. he said, I forget who it was, or I would call it out here, that he knew Griffey would get in no matter what. He didn't think Griffey needed his vote, so he gave it to other people. I mean, that mentality is a little rough because we care so much about percentages, but he got in anyway. And there's also the counter of, once you're in the Hall of Fame, does your percentage matter? I mean, for baseball, it does seem to matter more than the other sports. And off of your point earlier, for baseball, the vitriol seems to be the loudest, even by non-baseball people.
Right. I mean, I think
the loudest.
Well, I think part of it is because of, I mean, in basketball, like, it seems like everybody gets in.
That's a watered down Hall of Fame.
Tracy McGrady got in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a great player, but what did he ever do to make his team great? Right.
Well, they really extend it beyond the NBA.
Right. Correct.
Like Carmelo Anthony.
In football, they don't release
the NBA.
You know, football, it's in a room, or maybe they do it over Zoom now. I can't remember. But like the results are, you know, not made official. You know, like that kind of. So there isn't that sort of, like, they cut the finalists from, like, you know, 100 and some to 15.
That's different too. They really whittle it down. Yeah.
Right. So, but we're public, like, we're out here. I mean, at least we're owning it. Right.
Yeah, so, I said that. Yeah, no, I do respect anyone putting it out there for sure, because with football, we really don't know, even though they continuously whittle things down. There've been controversial selections. You and I have debated this before. A lot of voters made Terrell Owens wait, but Randy Moss walked right in. I think that's a bit controversial if you're going to go character issues. Why is one waiting 3 years? One is walking in. There's been decisions that are controversial in other sports, but baseball seems to be the one, probably because of the steroid issue, probably also because it's a numbers obsessed game, and probably also because in this modern era, certainly of my lifetime, many of the best in terms of their numbers are not going to ever get in because their steroid cloud or different things are tainted around them. Where in the other sports, the career leader for touchdown passes, touchdown receptions, total yards, they're in. There's no controversy, even if they're not the best of people. And that's not the case for baseball. So it adds this vitriol because, let's be honest, the casual fan that is not a voter, not obsessing over this for hours like you, or not even digging in as much as I am, they see people that are not in and just freak out because they grew up loving certain players, and it gets more into the nitty gritty. Again, we'll agree with Mike Asti here on Mic Drop.
I appreciate it. And I'll just outline my for the listeners here my methodology when it comes to the PED guys. I voted. Yeah, I was going to ask. My first year was 20. Well, my first year to vote was 21. So the 22 ballot, I believe, yeah, and the 2022 class. I voted for Bonds and Clemens. Why did I vote for Bonds and Clemens and Sheffield for that matter? Because they never tested positive when there was an official drug testing enforcement policy in place. Okay.
So I understand 2004 on, by the way.
I understand it was the last handful of years of their career, but look, they were still pretty effective players.
Yeah.
And like when I gave the talk at the History Center in November, a guy and I got into a pretty respectful, but spirited debate about this. And he's like, it's like standing over a guy with a gun in his hand and like the gun is smoking and the guy's dead on the floor. And you're saying he's not guilty of murder. And I said, that's because murder wasn't illegal at the time, right? Like, that's why he's not guilty. And that's sort of the way baseball approached that, right? So that's why, look, A-Rod should be in the Hall of Fame. He should. He did not have to inject himself with anything to be a Hall of Famer, and yet he did.
Sure.
And there's other guy, and he tested pot, like he got busted and served time. The people that vote, Manny should be in the Hall of Fame. Manny didn't need to do that. But Manny tested positive 3 times.
Yeah.
Like he had to retire. Or he would have had to serve a year-long suspension. That was what happened at the end. He wanted to keep playing, and they were like, well, you're gonna have to sit out of here. And he's like, all right, I guess I'm retiring.
Yeah.
So and look, and we get it. Look, I've got my sheet here. This is what we get from the Hall of Fame. And it talks about the parameters. And I'm sure you've looked at this.
Yeah.
But no, I just want to read out the one section that basically voting. This is part 5. I'll read it to you. Voting shall be based upon the player's record, playing ability, integrity, sportsmanship, character, and contributions to the teams on which they played. That is the one that trips it. Like, if we removed that section, I'd be like the NFL.
And that's what I mean. I was going to bring up that in the other Hall of Fame, especially basketball, that whittles it down and really goes beyond the NBA and talks about, Carmelo Anthony's gold medals, etc. And, and Syracuse national title. And if you go into all of that, then he walks right in, which is as he did. But baseball does give you a stronger criteria that does also lean more into the character of the player as well. So I'm going to ask you what I think fans listening to this probably are screaming, and this is always the case with Baseball Hall of Fames. What would then your response be to someone who says, well, there are players that are in the Hall of Fame that it's almost universally recognized they were racist. They might have been in, there are some that are believed to be in the KKK.
Right.
Yeah, and there are some that think they weren't there. That's a very murky thing. There are some debate whether that's legit or not, but there are some that believe he was in the KKK. You can even go to the Pete Rose thing with Cap Anson, literally admitted betting, and that was way back. We're going to the 1800s now. So some of these infractions being held against guys today, there are people in the Hall of Fame that it's factually known they did it.
I think it's fair, but I mean, like the voting block now is different than it was 70 years ago,
certainly 100 years ago. Yeah.
And I just think that I don't know if that was in, I literally don't know if that the rule part 5, what I just read was in what the guys got in 1961.
I don't believe so. I mean, I don't believe so. There were even players that did things that didn't end up getting banned from baseball that later did. I mean, the rules were way different.
For me, it is tough. It is tough playing the morals police. I mean, it's tough.
That's
but
what
I think when you talk about, when you talk about cheating, like when there's proof that you tried to gain an advantage illegally, to the extent that you treated your body as a science experiment, like I'm okay.
And proof for you is only
you got penalized. Now some of the guys that I respect that vote say, look, well, these guys got penalized and they did the crime, they did the time, and they should still deserve consideration. Sure. I look at it like this: these guys are great players, all-time great players. They've made millions and millions of dollars. They are parts of their Franchise's lore forever and ever. I mean, heck, I was in Pittsburgh, a couple of years ago when Barry got into the Pirates, Wall of Fame, and we talked to Barry about it afterwards.
Some are treated better than others, to be fair. I mean, Sammy Sosa is not treated well by Chicago. But.
So I mean, the way I look at it is, that not getting in the Hall of Fame is not some sort of red mark against them. Like, I mean, it is for Barry because, dude, you'd be in if you had not done these things.
And also, we both know him well enough. He doesn't want to admit this publicly. This bothers him. He's bothered by this. I 100% believe he's bothered by this.
I think he is, but I do believe him when I think he's let it go. I mean, it bothers me.
Maybe he's let it go now, but I think there was I even said this on this show and other shows, and I believe this was even others who were trying to help him. There's been an ingratiating, initiative almost around Barry Bonds. You now see him on the Fox show. The people position him sitting next to Ken Griffey Jr. all the time, who's universally positive and popular. They have him laughing with Jeter. They've been putting Bonds, Major League Baseball, whether it be the national networks or even MLB Network, much more in Front Street than he was when he first retired. And I do feel like some of those people are trying to help him, maybe on what was the recent Veterans Committee and that type of modern era ballot. That he didn't get many votes there, though. But there is a softening of him in recent years, which the Pirates took advantage of and put him in. They didn't do it right away. They put him in just a couple years ago. The man hasn't played since 2007. It's not like the Pirates waited a year later. I think if there was no steroids and he didn't leave, he's in right away. So there's been a softening of him, but that softening has been to the public, not to anyone in those rooms. I mean, he did not do well. Him and Clemens did not do well.
I haven't talked to. I know Jason Stark, for example, I believe was on that committee, and there were some baseball, some Hall of Famers that were on the committee. I mean, that's a tough one for me to swallow because let's remember Bud Selig, who was the commissioner.
Yeah,
he's in, and a lot of people made a lot of money.
Yeah, that's
in
true.
the late '90s and the early 2000s, watching Barry Bonds hit baseballs and Roger Clemens throw baseballs, right? So that 100%. Is so even I understand the damage that they did to the sport because of what they did off the field. But man, it strikes me as a little bit disingenuous. But I don't know the parameters of that discussion, so I don't want to go too far in my criticism.
Yeah, that's different than the ballot and what you're voting on. But I just wanted to bring that up because. And I'm sure you also know this. They got such a low number of votes on that.
They're not even going to be on.
They have one more try. They have, to my knowledge, they have one more try, and then they have to get. I think they have to get 5 votes on the next one, and then they're done for life. And I would imagine that I'd imagine they're not ever going to get in now. I mean, if that committee, if they didn't even get half of the room in there, they're done. I mean, honestly.
Right. I mean, look, I've been to the Hall of Fame. I don't know if you had a chance to go.
Oh no, I've been there before. Yeah.
So I mean, look, there's Bonds is recognized in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
There are
people don't get that.
Clemens is being recognized. It's literally about getting into that one room, and like it's unfortunate. The thing that's unfortunate about it is because they are two guys that without doing this stuff, we're going to get in anyway, right?
Yeah, you could argue it's their own fault in a way. I mean, you could argue it's their own fault in a way because, again, I was a Bonds fan growing up. Nobody would deny, even the biggest Bonds hater around, he would have been a Hall of Famer regardless of any of this stuff. But at the same time, if you want to preserve the history of the game in a way, I don't believe he'd have the all-time home run record or the single season home run record without steroid use. So if his punishment of trying to beef up records, and there are many respected journalists that have sourced 18 times over that they believe from conversations even at the time that Bonds was a little PO'd by what was going on and who was getting all the love, and that he was like, watch what I'll do when McGwire does this and I'm a better player. But you could argue, as much as I would like him to be in, you could argue, okay, Barry, you proved your point. You proved your point. You're way better than those guys. And if you touch steroids, you could do more. And if you were just going to be 600 plus homers, but you take steroids, now you have the records. You proved your point in those conversations with your colleagues. You proved your point, but your punishment is you can't get in Cooperstown now. I mean, that you didn't have to do it. You wanted to win an argument. So you won an argument and now you don't get in the room. Right. I mean, that could be a pushback on that as well. And I don't want to spend all day on the steroid issue, so I do want to ask you one more point on it. And I know Bonds has also spoken out against this. Where would you stand on really softening the steroid bar? However, and this is keeping accurate to what the Hall of Fame does, putting it on your plaque. And I don't mean lying on the plaque. I'm saying for Bonds, you would place widely believed to have used steroids or whatever. You could even not, because he didn't test positive of a test, but you could put implicated in the Mitchell report, which is a journalistic, it's not a random person. That is a respected journalist that wrote that document. So you could put 7-time MVP. Here's the numbers, a single season all-time record, select percentage. Here's what it is. And the bottom of the plaque, implicated in the Mitchell report by the journalist, and allow people to just read that and tell people who that journalist is, etc. Bonds is vehemently against that. Where would you be? Would you?
Well, I mean, it's tough. It's like, it's one of those things where, like, technically you're innocent until proven guilty, right? I mean, technically, because he, and then like
A-Rod's, it would say, failed
because he did not, because he didn't test positive and was not suspended while there was an enforcement policy in place, right? So again, it's one of those things where, I mean, does he? Yes, he certainly looks guilty, but illegal, like, I guess from a legal standpoint, could you say he did this thing or was, what you're writing?
He also wasn't
on there is actually correct. I mean, it's if you want
correct. If you want to get into legal, though, he wasn't found not guilty of perjury. Wasn't it that he was? It just kind of like it was dismissed. It wasn't not guilty of because if he was being tried for perjury in which he said he never knowingly took steroids. So if you're not found not guilty for that, what are we then to believe? That somebody in there believes you did perjure yourself, which means that you did knowingly take it then, because that was what was discussed.
I mean, like, again, but like, sort of our discussion we're having sort of proves the point on maybe why it's okay that these guys are not in, because like, we're not talking about baseball, right? Like,
I think that's why the voters don't want them in. I think honestly, Will, and this maybe shouldn't be the reason as well. And I do think part of this is why maybe even T.O. had to wait several years, even though he eventually went in and then he did his own thing and refused to go to Canton. I don't think many of the voters want Bonds to stand up on stage and have a speech and to basically deny ever doing anything wrong, which is what he continues to do. I just don't think, I mean, I guess that's another question. The difference of Bonds and A-Rod, including even recently, I mean, he's going on even, he probably would come on this show. Like, he's very willing to go on anyone's podcast, whether you're Buster Olney or whether you're me, and he will go on there for 20 minutes, talk all day, and admit steroid use. He's even done calculations. He believes he's hit 7 more home runs individual seasons from 01 after the Mariners on. And he's even willing to take those home runs off. Like, he's really admitting steroid use. There's a documentary recently that I actually still need to watch. But Barry Bonds has dug in. I think we both know, regardless of opinion on voting, that he did something. And it's almost making a mockery of that by he continuously denies that he did anything wrong at all. does that change anything for you that maybe you feel better about A-Rod, that he is very willing to ask for contrition and say, I did this, I'm sorry, here's what my real career is.
I respect. Look, I think the United States is all about second chances, right? I mean, that's
right. You got to apologize first, though.
But look, A-Rod, look, he's a billionaire. He's like all of this, like his life has turned out fine, just like Barry's life has turned out fine, right? They don't they don't get this one thing. And again, I voted for Barry. I voted for Barry because, as I pointed out, he did not he didn't test positive during the when there was an official, whereas A-Rod did, right?
It is a little insane. I think we need to get this out there for anyone who's not as much of an historian. It was illegal in the country before Major League Baseball. So what Bonds is accused of in the Mitchell report,
as long as they could, they looked.
But what I'm saying is that what Bonds is accused of in the Mitchell report, if he would have retired in, say, the year 2000, before the 2004 testing came into Major League Baseball, retired, and they had the Mitchell report come out, he could have still been indicted because he's a citizen of the country. He, according to the Mitchell report, he broke laws. It's just he didn't break Major League Baseball law.
Right.
Because it wasn't a Major League Baseball crime. And there are some, I need to throw this out there too, there are some that believe that he did fail an HGH test in 2003 that they could not use against him because of the year before Major League Baseball started the policy.
Correct.
So if that is factually proven as well, and there's murkiness there, that would mean it's proven that he did it. It just was in front of the policy.
I mean,
which,
I would think
again,
if we ever get to a point where Barry gets in, which look, there's a chance. I mean, who knows?
There's one more shot for him.
I think that he would be magnanimous. I think he would not get up there and use that opportunity as a chance to settle scores or anything like that.
No, but do you think he would admit any wrongdoing? Any wrongdoing at all? Doesn't have to go into a detail that
I don't say that I know him that well. I
think that would be nice if he would, to be honest with you. And I even said this, that after he did not get in on this recent committee, I think what would help him, I'm going to be honest here, is that he would have a public press conference that everybody in the world would attend and watch, and he would admit wrongdoing. To stand up there and act like he did nothing wrong. I mean, he is so aware of what goes into his body. To say that, okay, the cream was in my body, but I didn't knowingly have it there, or my trainer gave me something and I didn't know what it was. Like, he actually testified under oath that his trainer gave him something. He put it on his body and didn't know what it was. Knowing Bonds, that seems insanely hard to imagine. So I would love for him to have a press conference and say, when I said that, I was wrong. When I still would be a great player, but here, this, and this. Give something. I think that would really help him in that room. Because I don't think he's that. I think he's a little maybe even surprised himself on how poorly he did in there. I mean, that's just purely peers that are actually friends of his. That a lot of them said no. Still, that's the thing. So, and I'm not even sure how it would be received by many of the current Hall of Famers. Like, there are some voters that actually call them Hall of Famers they know and say, I'm not sure. I'm having this discussion with Mike on a show for 20 minutes. It's a debate. I don't like talking about it. I love to talk about baseball. What do you feel? And then that Hall of Famer says, no, I don't want him in. And then they go with that. There are some that just align with the people that are in there. And you kind of got to respect that as well. So it'll be very interesting. That obviously always gets brought up. Now, the Hall of Fame issue in terms of the steroid guys is not as much of a debate now, I feel like, once Bonds and Clemens left the ballot, because you're almost in a pigeonholed scenario, no matter anyone's opinion. Whatever was done with them has to be done with A-Rod and Manny. So that just leaves room for the rest of this conversation of Beltran and Jones probably getting in, and then will other guys get in? It would just almost be unheard of to have A-Rod walk in there after Barry Bonds didn't get in on the ballot there. And I think, let's be honest too, Will, there are other players who were implicated in the Mitch report that, as much as, nobody wants to listen to Jose Canseco, I mean, I think in terms of who took steroids, he probably actually knows. And he's flat out said, there are current Hall of Famers that got voted in on even since you had a vote that he knows for sure took steroids. So,
I mean, look, as a fan, there's part of me that, I remember. So Canseco started talking almost 20 years ago, right? I mean, I think his book came out 20 years ago.
Yeah, and he had Pudge Rodriguez in there. He walked in the Hall of Fame. He had Mike Piazza in there, who went in with Griffey. Canseco has said that Piazza, he believes, was on steroids. Padre Rodriguez, Canseco claims that he injected personally.
I mean,
you read his book.
As a fan, I remember at that time as a fan, I almost felt like I almost don't care. Like I just want to go watch baseball and be amazed by what these players can do and not think about
imagine a world
whatever it took for them to get there. Like, I mean, I sort of suspended disbelief.
Yeah.
Now, as a journalist with a vote, I have a different responsibility. But look, it is a, like I'll be, once A-Rod gets off, and I mean, I think he's still got 3 more years. I think after this one, he'll probably be around 50% would be my guess. He's been in the 40s to 50.
In the 40s, right? It's similar to what Bonds did, if you remember. They were like 30s, 40s.
60, I think
they jumped up a little bit. Yeah,
what's interesting is too that like we talked about how the voting block has changed. It's gotten younger.
Right.
Some of the great sites, the great Ryan Thibodeau, who is sort of has a business that tracks the votes. I mean, like that's what they do. There's been a lot of first-time voters and that are filling out 10 ballot guys, and I think that maybe there's a chance that some of the younger voters don't care as much about this stuff as maybe old unks like me. And that's they've worked again. Like to be able to vote for the Hall of Fame, it's not like I had to wait 10 years. You get in the Baseball Writers Association, then you have to cover Major League Baseball for 10 years before you get a vote. So they're not just giving it to guy on the street with a blog. Like they're not doing it, right? So everybody, so that's why I have respect for everybody that votes.
And it's harder to get a Baseball Hall of Fame vote than the other sports Hall of Fame votes and MVPs and I have a lot of votes as well. I don't have a Baseball Hall of Fame vote. This is the highest bar of really any journalist covering any sport. Really, it's much easier to get the other votes.
And so because of that, so we'll see. I mean, I think I think that it helps that everything is sort of cut and dry. But there is a segment that doesn't care. Like there's people in the AP that I am friends with that I respect that have votes that vote for Manny and A-Rod. And
I do think that I don't. See, again, I would be fine with putting it on their plaque. I would be fine with either the mentality, and some don't do. So I don't like the mentality of put Bonds and Clemens in, but nobody else suspected of steroids. I would rather it all or nothing. If you're going to, obviously Bonds was better than, Sammy Sosa if you're ranking an all-time career. But if you're going to put Bonds in, then Sosa has 360 home run seasons. Bonds had 1. I mean, 360 home run seasons is utter madness.
Well, let's remember there's somebody else in this mix too that was a better player than Sosa and was closer to Bonds than we might want to think, and that was Rafael Palmeiro.
Oh yeah, Palmeiro, 500 homers,
3,000 hits, and 500 homers.
100%, very, very consistent. He's not in, so that's my point. If you're going to put in the elite of the elite, the 2 top guys of Bonds and Clemens, then all the suspected steroid guys that have hit benchmarks that you would imagine would get in normally without the cloud, without Canseco's book, for example, then they also should be in, or at least to go on their plaque. Or we keep them all out. I think the issue that we get into is we probably have let a few slip through the cracks. We probably have. That's what's been implicated by many people who kind of are in the know. So because of that, it does make it murky. But Bonds and Clemens are done being voted on. You can't vote on them any longer if you're Will Graves. It's up to another committee. And it's a committee that everyone always said was going to be friendlier to Bonds and Clemens, and they simply were not. So I would love to know what that discussion entailed, because the prediction by many people, not that they were going to get in, but there would be more of a vote total. Not the case. And also will be very interesting, and this will be my last point on Bonds. If I was someone in his camp and he wanted to ingratiate himself to the committee for the next goal of this years from now, he has a former teammate that he had a rocky relationship going in. What I would do if I was in his camp, I would suggest trying to attend, not to speak, sit there and be a guest of your former teammate that you went to the World Series with, and don't talk. And maybe that helps you. If him and Kent aren't friends, but I'm just saying that the Giants would let him go. I think Kent would even be fine with it at this point, based on what he said, that they're not, he doesn't care what Bond does. Sit in the front row and keep your mouth shut and let it be Kent's day. And then maybe that'll help you with those people. But I don't know if Bonds would do that. If I had to bet, he's not going to go. But I'm just saying that there are little things I think he could do to help himself that I don't think he's interested in doing and helping himself.
It almost feels like that committee's decision to elect Kent was almost like giving Barry the finger one.
It almost maybe was. I mean, I could argue that I think Kent probably should have got more votes through the actual voters than he did. I mean, if you just look position breakdown, I mean, you could argue he's the best homer and hitting second baseman of all time. When you're the best at your position at something, I think you can argue getting in. So I don't hate him being in, but I could hear him being a borderline guy. But maybe it was a middle finger to Bonds. Maybe that was their point. So
I know one last thing I'll say before we move on is like, because I bring this up and it just occurred regularly, but it just occurred to me now that I hadn't mentioned it yet.
Yeah.
I mean, look what happened with Dave Parker in the middle of his career.
Yeah.
Pirates, right?
Yeah, he's in now, but yeah.
Everybody, I mean, like Dave Parker should have been in my opinion. If I had to vote when he was eligible, I would have voted for
this. Is why these committees exist.
Why he was not. I understand why he was not. Yeah. And with Bear, I mean, with what they were doing was really illegal. I mean, there's there's legality, and then there's like, oh my God, we're in federal court, right? And I'm not singling, Cobra out. I mean, he was part of a large contingent of players. That wasn't,
it was a different era. Yeah.
But we're 40 years later, and he finally, 40 years removed from that, and he finally has his day. There's a chance,
That's why the committee exists.
I think, I wouldn't even say whatever happens with this committee the next time he's up for it. There's going to be another committee after that. Okay. And so there's a chance, there's a non-zero chance that Barry gets in eventually. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's better something than nothing. And that's the point of these committees, to be honest with you, that if everything's just going to be so debated and so contentious, and you and your colleagues are yelling in rooms, the point of these committees is to potentially fix some injustices, to right some wrongs, or to, as you're saying with Cobra, allow a period of atonement. Okay, we couldn't do it then, but now it's been almost a half century. Like, let's have another conversation. And it's not a yelling match. It's 14 people in a room. Let's have a civil conversation. Right. That maybe is a situation that maybe could benefit Bonds, but it didn't this time. And we are far from we're in younger voters. We've ingratiated him to national media, and didn't work. I'm hard pressed to believe it's going to change in just a few years when it gets up for him again, but it's a better than zero chance, I guess. But yeah, and I do want to touch on one that you mentioned here before we get to talk some Steelers, maybe before we end the show. You mentioned Andrew McCutchen. Obviously, we're in Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh-centered show, despite throwing some national things at the wall like we're doing here. Andrew McCutchen's not officially done. He hasn't announced that. He just was with the Pirates. Who knows his thoughts on playing longer? But he's an interesting case for sure. I've always said, and I even wrote about this, that you can't put him in without Andrew Jones and Carlos Beltran in, because their careers are similar, and those two guys have just a little bit more in terms of awards. They did it longer. I just feel like they did more in their career, even though McCutchen did have the MVP year. So, but now that they're probably getting in and they're done, I guess make your case if you have one for McCutchen. I know that you kind of are one that pioneered.
I mean, I think, when you look at his numbers, he's at 332 homers, I believe. I think his hit totals in the 2250 range. His career batting average is a dip down. I believe it's around 270 now, so it's not quite. But look, he was a 5-time All-Star, 3-time MVP finalist, won the MVP. And look, we had, knowing him personally the way that I do, knowing what he meant to the Pirates, especially in that era, the early 2010s.
I was growing up with it. Yep.
And the fact that he, that he came back, that he never moved. I just think that what he's like, when you talk about, when we talk about the parameters, it says contributions to the teams on which they played. And I think if you expand that beyond the team and into the city of Pittsburgh, you'd be hard pressed to find a player in the last 20 years that has done as much and meant as much to their team, to their franchise, as Andrew McCutchen has meant to the Pirates. So, I've long said that I would never, vote for a guy just because I covered him. Yeah. But
and we have some voters who said they did that.
But Kutch I know him as a person, and we're talking about, there's racists and these guys and that guys, and there's jerks in the Hall of Fame. Well, if there's room for those guys, there might be room for Kutch, but I do worry that his peak was not, from 10 or 11 through 16, 17. He was as good as a player as there was in baseball. And then, then he became sort of just like almost like a mercenary, right? Like just a have bat, will travel. I'll hit 240 with 20 homers and 58 RBIs and be a great clubhouse guy. And maybe, and Abreu has better numbers. I mean, that's the thing. Like
that's the thing. Yeah.
When I will say the one thing that did surprise me when I was looking up Abreu's numbers was the 400 steals. Right.
I think Abreu is very underrated historically. I don't necessarily have a problem with him not being in, but I think he's very underrated historically. And another one I want to throw out there that I think is a fair comp to McCutchen in terms of even meaning to a city. Granted, he does not have an MVP, and he's getting very little love. So Beltran and Jones, I think, got to be in first. They were just better at a similar position and did more overall. But Torrey Hunter,
I knew. Look, when
Torrey Hunter has 10 Gold Gloves. He was the McCutchen of Minnesota. Then he tailed off just like McCutchen as a mercenary. He is getting very little love, and I think he's very underrated.
When I worked, in Florida, in newspapers in Florida, and the Twins would have spring training, and still doing Fort Myers, and I would go and do some work there, during spring training, and he was always great, and very, very Kutch-like in term of his personality,
very similar
in the way that people sort of gravitate towards him.
Yeah.
Kutch again. Was he ever the best or one of for a stretcher? Was he one of the three best players in the game? He was not, and McCutchen was. And
he was the best defensive center fielder for a period, I would say, but he was never the best individual player. And McCutchen was, of course, winning an MVP. That would be, I guess, that is an advantage for McCutchen. But if you're going to go into a character issue,
he was a finalist in 12 and a finalist in 14. So
McCutchen was. Right.
It wasn't like an out of the blue development.
Sure.
And he had this one great year, and then it kind of fell back. I mean, he built to be a really, really great player. And, if he can find a job this year, whether it's in Pittsburgh or elsewhere, if he can get to 350, which would be tough because he hit 13 last year, I think. So it might be tough.
I think, and
in a different ballpark. I mean, in a different ballpark, maybe he can't. I don't know, but I would hope that he, there's some, the fan base seems to be divided about whether they want him back or not for one more run. I would say if I'm the Pirates, if I can't find three better hitters to fill in his DH than Andrew McCutchen, then I.
If you can, I guess that's fair. I think people would rather they would find better because you have Paul Skeens.
I'm not disagreeing with that point, but if the reality is we get to February 10th and they just acquired Brandon Lowe, but he's going to give them he's got a chance to have a pretty good year, but you still need some bats. They got the password, but I mean that guy didn't do that much in Boston after he got promoted last year. He's still probably if you put up a lineup today for the Pirates today, Andrew McCutchen is probably still one of the 9 best hitters in that group.
Yeah, and I would love to see him. If they can't find better and they're just not going to win, then go ahead and let him add some numbers. I wouldn't mind that, even though that was what they tried to do last year, and then they didn't play him a lot, and fans got upset about that. But we'll see how he's handled. I would think that whether it's the Pirates or elsewhere, he's going to need to do more. And I do think it's a pretty fair barometer, even though, yes, he has an MVP, even if he has a higher ceiling because of the MVP with voters, to look at the vote total of Torrey Hunter. It's just not there. I would be surprised if McCutchen gets in, but I would lean.
It's certainly more unlikely than likely, but
I guess that's where I am. Yeah,
but it's the parameters seem to be changing, and
maybe they'll change. Maybe the
maybe we'll get a flood. Maybe we'll all sort of just say screw it, and I'll have 10 guys out every year because it's just sort of because that is that's the problem that we have with these discussions is. Well, if you let in this guy, you got to let in that guy, right? So that's why, this. I'll be honest. That's one of the reasons I kept it to Jones and Beltran because who else on that list this year is better than those two guys? And the answer is there are not two better players.
The only two better
by PEDs.
Right. I was going to say the only two better players are A-Rod and Manny Ramirez, but they're tainted by PEDs. So if you eliminate them, then Beltran, if I had a ballot, I think I probably would do the same as you, honestly. I think it would have been Beltran and Jones and leave the rest. Mostly are wholly very good players. I mean, Utley is a debate we won't get into here. Felix Hernandez is even a debate for some. I don't think he gets the bar, but he did win a Cy Young Award over CC. and he had a way less win total. So the win total has not been an issue in that individual award, but then it comes to be for your career. That seems hypocritical.
I'll be honest with you. Like I would bet you when we're having this discussion,
Cole Hanimal seems like he's getting more love than I would give him.
I mean, I would imagine if we're having this discussion next year, I'll be telling you why I voted for Felix. I
wouldn't hate Felix. I think Felix is a barometer of the youth movement. He was the beginning of kind of the analytic age.
Right.
And and this is not a small thing. Him winning a Cy Young Award with Seattle with 13 wins over a New York Yankees 20-game winner was a gigantic deal. That would never have happened in the previous era. That was a different mentality.
And what did that lead to? What did that lead to? Jacob deGrom and Paul Skeens.
And Paul Skeens winning one despite not being on a good team and barely having double digits in a win total. So Felix Hernandez honestly is the pioneer of that, and they do owe him a little bit of love for him winning it, allowed them to win it. But if you allow the individual season, but then say, well, the win bar is so low for the career, that does look a little hypocritical. So that may
Mark Burley's going to be looking around like, what do I got to do?
Yeah, right? Mark Burley, you mentioned.
If you're going to let a guy with 163 career wins get in, what's Mark Burley doing?
Then Mark Burley is going to be brought up. So how much do you really whittle it down?
And that is sort of like I'm trying to avoid that part of the discussion. That's one of the reasons my standards remain as high as they do.
Will Graves with the Associated Press, Mike Asti here on Mic Drop with Believe in Sirius XM. The last point here I do want to say, and then we'll talk some Steelers, and we could talk about this for hours here on the Baseball Hall of Fame. And we actually agree on our ballot, even though I don't agree with many of your colleague voters. But nonetheless, it's a highly contentious topic here. So Torrey Hunter, a wins above replacement. This is BWAR for Baseball Reference of 50.6. By the way, McCutchen's at 49.
Right.
So sabermetric wise, he's below.
The same player, right.
And I want to throw out the comparison here for the guys that I think are getting in now as we're in front of the announcement, but it's likely they're getting in. Andrew Jones is, I believe, let me pull it up here. Andrew Jones is at 62.7, and Carlos Beltran was around 70 some.
Right. Correct.
So they are way ahead from the debated Hall of Very Good guys. Do you bump them in? And I do feel like Torrey Hunter's never going to get in on these votes. He's too far away on the percentages. Correct. I do think that's going to hurt McCutchen because, and even younger voters, maybe even Pittsburgh fans who now have votes, for example, if they sit there and look at the analytics, they might have a hard time putting him in and not having Hunter there. And maybe that's an annoying thing that goes on for you, the people, how can I put in this guy and not the other guy? But that's a real thing that exists. So that is an issue, and we could even go further in, and there's personal issues there. But if you look at the percentages of Jim Edmonds, he got 2.5% of the vote, and I understand his personal issues. 2.5% of the vote. Jim Edmonds' analytics, overall numbers, Gold Gloves, power numbers are right there with Torrey Hunter, Andrew McCutchen, arguably above them, and actually his numbers are closer to Beltran and Jones than they are to McCutchen and Hunter. And Jim Edmonds didn't get any kind of love on the. I was a lot of that before you had a vote, but 2.5% is atrocious. That was a message from the voters that we don't like your personal life, is what that came off as, and because I don't know how you can go to it any other way. And there are personal votes. I mean, you could make an argument, and this. I don't want to have a debate here because I want to talk some Steelers, but you can make an argument that if you're going to put in Felix Hernandez and Mark Burley, it's hard to leave out Kurt Schilling. And I understand his personal, and I understand what he said, but we've talked about Ty Cobb and others. His win total is higher than theirs. His ERA is right around the same. He was vying for the Cy Young Award multiple times. He was the co-MVP in a World Series team with Randy Johnson, who's a top tenor. He was a seminal, major player on a curse-breaking world championship team. He was on another world championship team. Without him, those championships are probably not won. If you're doing the analytics and get those other guys in, if you do wins above replacement, Kurt Schilling's is over 70. Those guys are lower. It would then be your whole
right. I mean, but I can only vote for the guys on my ballot, right?
I know, I understand. I'm just saying that we've set a precedent to this point,
right?
So
right, and this, certainly his personal
Yeah, no,
life played a big role in that. I mean,
100%.
I believe he was on that last ballot with Bonds and Clemens. I didn't vote for him, and I didn't vote for him because he said, "Don't vote for me." Well, like, all right, bro, like that's fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, he did say that. He does say that he doesn't want in. And part of Clemens' issue, there was a Joe Buck interview in a documentary a couple years ago, and he told Joe Buck he no longer wants in because he thinks he's been disrespected. He's like, I wouldn't even care about it now. And Joe even said, they kept it on, like, don't do this. You're going to lose votes. And he's like, I don't care. So you could argue that if that's what again, if it's a tie-breaking scenario and the player is like, I don't want in, why stress yourself out for that person? So that could be a fair point there. But I had to throw that out there to be fair, that we have set a standard, even if past voters, on guys with a checkered personal life, even if their numbers say they deserve it and they have the moments, we're not putting in. So now we're going to put in other guys with a very similar, if not worse, on the field resume just because their personal life is better. That also rubs people the wrong way as well. But that is where we are right now. Will Graves, again, of the Associated Press, Mike Asti are talking the Baseball Hall of Fame and his ballot. I do want to get into some Steelers talk here briefly. Obviously, the Steelers now are sitting there as a playoff team. Now they're in first place in the division. Now they've flipped the script. It's been one of those years where everyone's out on Tomlin for a while and it flips around. I guess to simply ask you now, as they're sitting there in a position that, if they take care of business, they're going to get in, even though they have another one with the Ravens coming up, and who knows? It's been a roller coaster ride. There's been conversation recently on if the conversation and the debate on Tomlin and the chants even from fans was fair then, because now that the season played out, they've turned it around. And there are some that have argued that the fans weren't even being fair to them or being fair to him. But it's been 19 years. It's been a long time since he won a playoff game. Where do you stand on if fans have been fair to Mike Tomlin? And even as a reporter, how much longer do you think he wants to do this and maybe will be in Pittsburgh? Because we agree they're not going to fire him with that headline. But this feels like this has been different than in past years.
I was at the game, the Bills game, and I cover all their home games. I'm at the facility 3-4 times a week, around the club a lot. That was, the booing of Renegade and the chance of fire him were much. There's always been a portion of the fan base that's probably want him fired since the day after he got hired, right? And that's just the reality of it. And this, as it is with pretty much every coach ever, right?
Sure.
But that was different, and and I wrote that on the Monday after the game when they played so poorly that it felt for the first time that it wasn't just the fringe,
right,
or sort of like the significant minority. Right. It felt like there was like a large, sense of discontent that had permeated maybe beyond what the ownership had thought. But the reality is, and then even where Ben Roethlisberger and James Harrison are out there, saying, hey, maybe it's time to go. And the funny part about it is, here's 2 weeks later, they go and win 2 games. On Monday night before the Dolphins game, Ben gets into the Hall of Honor. He has a media thing with us.
I saw that.
And I my good friend prior to ESPN sort of lobbed him a softball about being in hosting a podcast. And then we kind of were in cahoots on this. And I said, because she knew what I wanted to follow up with. And I said, Ben, what's it like to be, critical of an organization that you're so closely affiliated with? And he said, well, I didn't really say that Mike should go, and then he said, Mike, he literally said as part of his answer, Mike could coach here another 10 years and that's fine. And I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, that's not what you said.
Right.
But to me, that's more, that's not about Ben. That's about sort of just the changing winds of not being in the building, right? Like the wind, like that building, that team is the eye of the hurricane at all times, and the winds surround it. But the eye of that hurricane, it's always calm. And I think that's basically what's happened here. You give Rodgers credit. He's been talking about since week 3, don't ride the roller coaster. And everybody's riding the roller coaster.
I know. They do it every year. Yeah. It just does feel like it's been different this year. It does feel like the vitriol was louder and it was not a fringe minority. I even have been on the record, to be honest with you. I do believe Tomlin, talking about Hall of Fames, he's going to walk into Canton some days as a deserving Hall of Famer based on coaches that are already in. You put Tony Dungy and Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson. Mike Tomlin deserves and is going to get in. However, I can 100% understand the fans that would argue, sure, but it's been many years since you won a playoff game, since the 2016 season. His playoff win percentage, his playoff overall record is now below 500. It's just not been the same in the last decade. And look at what happened with the Eagles and Andy Reid. They eventually cut bait. They're going to honor him later. They won championships. He led a dynasty. It worked out for everybody. They're all friends. It's very rare to be almost 20 years, almost a decade without a playoff win, and have management and ownership pretty much make it clear there's nothing the man can do wrong and he's never going to be fired. That is a weird dynamic that really only exists in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. And even in Pittsburgh, the Penguins told Mike Sullivan to get out of town despite 2 Stanley Cups. And that's very comparable. And he wasn't there as long. So I can understand the fan base who's in this era with they see their friends rooting for other teams and they make a change and it helps the team. And yet their franchise will not even, it almost is like they get annoyed by the discussion. You even see Art Rooney II when he has his end of the season wrap. He was asked about it last year, and he came off very annoyed by the question. I think at the very least, there has to be some recognition. This is not a fringe lunatic question. This is pretty fair to discuss. It's been a while since there's been a playoff win on the board here, and this is an historic franchise that says they want to win playoff games. They haven't been doing it. Every coach that gets fired, there are mitigating circumstances. Of course, it's not Tomlin's fault. There hasn't been, better quarterback play, even though, yes, he wanted Pickett. There's different things you don't have to blame on him, but there are coaches who get fired for a lot less, and he's just there. So I can understand that. I think that got louder this year, that there were very rational people, I like to think of myself as rational here in media, that were almost eventually saying, okay, it was a fringe lunatic crowd, maybe even some that had personal issues a decade ago, even years ago. I don't think it's that fringe anymore. Like, we can talk about this now. And I think that's where Ben Roethlisberger got in and Ryan Clark got into the conversation. They kind of said that too, that they like the guy, but maybe it's even best for Mike Tomlin to get out of this noise.
But the way to get Art Rooney's attention would be to not show up. That is the only surefire way.
Never going to happen too. Yep. Yeah.
That is if you're really gonna. I will say this:
you don't think the chance got his attention if, say, they would have kept losing?
Everybody heard them, right? But like, the irony with Mike is the thing that makes him great is also the thing that makes him frustrating, because he is such a decent coach that they never. And I wrote about this like 2 weeks ago. Like, they have never in 19 years. The playoff losses the last 8 years, maybe being a somewhat of an outliers of this. But during the regular season, they never let go of the rope. They never just say,
sure.
They don't. Think about this.
The team plays hard for him, or else they would.
Our good buddy, Chris Adamski, brings this stat up all the time. It's one of his favorites. It's one of my favorites. The Chiefs, over the next 3 weeks, will play 3 times as many meaningless football games as Mike Tomlin has coached in 19 years.
And that's insane, because obviously Tomlin hasn't been to a Super Bowl in a very long time, but still, that's an incredible thing to say.
That also makes it, that's part of the frustrating part too, right? Like, can consistently get them to level X, but he has been unable to get them beyond that for 10 years now, more than 10 years. I would point out that, but man, if you look at the cast of quarterbacks since 2019.
It's been rough. Yeah.
And Ben was diminished in his last couple of years. Wasn't the player he wasn't his prime, which is understandable. My God, the guy had his arm rebuilt at 38 years old. And yet they've been consistent. But who are the teams they are losing to, or who are the teams that are getting to the Super Bowl? They are guys. They're teams with guys. What happened in the Bills game? The Bills game, your 42-year-old quarterback looked every bit his age. And Josh Allen was like, I am in my prime of my Hall of Fame career, and this is what it takes to win in the NFL these days.
100%. No, you're right, and that is a major defense of Mike Tomlin. The only counter is, and he even admitted this at the time, and people can debate on how much he's involved in decision-making. He wanted Kenny Pickett. So if you want the quarterback, you're part of it. You're part of the so, like,
it's been an organizational failure to find the next guy. It has been
100%, but it's also part of Mike Tomlin. Like, Mike Tomlin is not. I think there's too many people that try to defend him and act like he's just a victim of circumstance. And
I wouldn't say that, but like, if you're going to ding him for the things he can't do, then you have to give him credit for the things he does do, right? He
is. That's true, and I think Mike Tomlin's career can kind of be best summarized. And my colleague Alan Saunders wrote about this a year ago. That Tomlin, and this is probably why fans are so polarized with him. he's had more years than any other coach in which he overachieved, but also has as many years where he underachieved.
Correct.
If you look at the playoff
when you look at those mid 2010 teams, the Killer B teams, like those teams, one of those groups should have gotten to the Super Bowl. One of them.
One of them, and the playoff losses are not all to the Patriots. They lost to Jacksonville. They had some rough losses during that period of time when they had the three best players at their positions. But yes, the year that they almost got in, and they would have in this current format with Mason and Duck. I mean, that's an incredible coaching job when Ben got hurt. Even these last few years,
in 22, I mean, they started 2-6, and they got
last few years. Even this year, I mean, Aaron Rodgers has been solid, but he's an older quarterback, and there's a lot of drama and a lot of incontinuity on the roster, and they're still likely going to get in, even if it's a weak division. All that's a feather in Tomlin's cap, but Hall of Fame's overall body of work, and that also means you're held against what happened, in 2016, or what happened in 2017 when you lose to Jacksonville. Like, it's so polarizing that I do honestly also believe that if Tomlin would go elsewhere, he might just have a monkey off his back and just breathe a sigh of relief and maybe like it for a minute or two. And then maybe it would work out for him and maybe as well for the Steelers. But it doesn't feel like that if they win a division, that's even going to be a talking point in the offseason at all. I mean, they're not a franchise making a change unless he wants to make that
one thing about Mike,
I'll say is,
the one thing about Tomlin I'll say is, look, he keeps his cards really close to the vest. Really.
He does.
Yeah. And 2 years ago when there was maybe he'll leave. I mean, that was all designed, leaked by his side to try to help him in contract negotiations with the Steelers. That's all that he had no intentions of leaving or taking a year off or whatever. I also know he's got a healthy self-regard. And the idea of being chased out of a town where he's like never had a losing season. Are you kidding me? Like he's never going to do that. That doesn't mean that but look, the reality is too, look, his boys are grown. His daughter's a sophomore at Georgia. There's nothing really tying him family-wise to Pittsburgh anymore. He's certainly like whenever he goes, it will be like I don't think there's going to be a lot of animosity. It'll be like when Mike Sullivan left. He was literally out of a job for like 4 days.
Oh, I'm sure. No, I am 100%.
I'm not saying that's a reason to keep him or a reason to fire him. I'm just saying like, I am around the team enough.
Yeah,
he still commands the room. The roster has its shortcomings. It costs them against elite competition. If they could find their quarterback,
sure,
we would not be having this discussion. I mean, I think that's
it gets into whether you like the upcoming draft class, and I don't personally.
A year ago we did, right? A year ago we did.
And
now we're like, I don't know.
Yes, I mean, so like you never know, and it's going to be in Pittsburgh, and that's another reason why they're not going to want to get in drama and be making changes when the draft's in Pittsburgh, and maybe they'll.
I don't know. I think that's more of just like I know Cabali has put that out there. I don't think there's any real truth to that. I think like if they had gone 4-13,
sure,
miserable, like they would move on. But
sure, but if they win the division.
It could still get away from them. Like they play Detroit, that's going to be uphill sledding. I don't expect them to win that game. They haven't won in Cleveland since 21.
No, it could get away from them. I guess my point is, if the Steelers win the division, even if we all agree that it's a weak division and they're kind of doing like Duke in the ACC, but they win the division no matter what, they're going to obviously not even entertain a discussion of moving on from Mike Tomlin as a division champion. Maybe win a playoff game, and who knows
if they can get away from if they get in the playoffs and avoid Josh Allen in the first round.
Right. I mean, it's a wide open field. It's a wide open field. Obviously, Mahomes not there, Burrow not there.
Right. Bills it has sort of worked out the way that they hoped, from that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, it is a wide. This could be one of those years, and you bring up Caboli. I know he's thrown that out there, almost kind of jokingly, that when the heat gets the loudest, and even if it's the most legit, watch Mike Tomlin finally win a playoff game this year. Like, it could happen, and it wouldn't be shocking if you look at who they maybe would play and you look at what's in front of them. Will Graves here of the Associated Press on Mike Drop. Last question. Do you think there's a chance, or what is the chance, of Aaron Rodgers coming back next year?
I get asked this a lot. If you'd asked me a month ago, I would have said 0. There's been some times this season where when he pulls himself up off the ground, off the turf after getting hit, there's that Danny Glover lethal weapon. I'm getting too old for this sort of look on his face.
Yeah.
But I do see him I've seen. I basically like, it's kind of odd, but I've probably watched him more closely, his interpersonal interactions outside of the field. I'm talking in the locker room. I'm talking. After games, I'm talking during practice, during downtimes in practice. Yeah. He does love the game. He loves that. A lot of players, when they talk about retiring, it like what do they talk about? They miss the playing of it, but they also miss being around it. And I think he really does love that. So I think if he finishes with a flourish here and there's no ready and he feels good, and I don't know nobody knows what's going on in his personal life. He talked about people in his family having illnesses.
Yeah.
Maybe that's still going on. Maybe it's not. He's kept he's made it very clear, like whenever we've tried to ask him anything even talking about like team meetings sort of behind closed doors, he's like, there's a wall.
That's how he's always been though. Even with Green Bay, he never wanted to talk personal life.
And, so I think I would say there's like a 2% chance that he comes back.
I mean, there's a chance, and it could also depend on what the draft looks like and how the Steelers finish. Yeah. And all of that.
I mean, I don't think Will Howard's, I think Mason's ready to be there if they need him. I think, Will Howard is intriguing, but he's not a guy that's going to get you in he's not going to be a Ben Roethlisberger, a revelation in his first year as a starter. That's not,
you would not imagine. No.
So
it was a fine draft pick,
but I would imagine, look, where Mike T will stick around and it's just hard to imagine him being chased out of town. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah. And I mean, he's never going to get officially fired to where the headline's going to read the Steelers fire him. If ever they do part ways, they'll allow the headlines to be a mutual parting ways, or Tomlin decides, or whatever. And you have to respect that in a way. I mean, there are a lot of franchises in sports that they treat legendary figures of their franchise pretty poorly. So, I mean, you have to actually like a franchise that does care about those things and care about the optics. But it is amazing where we are right now, recording this on December 19th. If I would have had you on 2 weeks ago, conversation then would have been, well, it doesn't look like they're going to get in. And now his friends in national media, Ryan Clark, who they're personally friends, was speaking out on ESPN that he should be, go elsewhere. Like, that was the conversation then. And now it's all pivoted back, for lack of a better word, that Tomlin's going to, keep on. So it's amazing what changes in a couple weeks. And it's not like they had nice wins. And obviously the Ravens win is really nice, but Miami's not that great. Like, they beat a team that's not going to make the playoffs. And yet now we're, powering through.
Well, I mean, I would say they probably played their best 25 minutes of football in a couple of years.
No, they did. No, and that's fair. And part of the reason why we're talking about Rodgers, and I'm asking about Rodgers, it always felt like this would be his swan song, especially if he played well and write the story that he didn't get to write with New York. But he's having fun. He's liking it. They're now kind of winning. They're going to maybe be in the playoffs, and he's playing far better than he had a roller coaster ride, but now he's picked it up again. So if this keeps on.
He said something after I know you're younger than me, Mike, but he said something after the Ravens game that resonated with me when he said, look, I'm 42, or I think it was, I can't remember if that was before or after his birthday, but he said, some days I wake up and I feel great and ready to go, and some days I don't. And look, I'm 51 and I feel that every day. Like, some days I am ready to jump out of bed and go do everything I could do when I was 26. And some days I'm like, you know what? I'm going to eat some Hershey Kisses and hang out and just lay on the couch and watch, old episodes of whatever. Right. So who knows? I mean, is he willing to risk that roller coaster again next year with his body? I don't know, but I do know he's having fun. I do know that.
And I also think that if he feels wanted, like if the Steelers go to him and say, we obviously drafted a guy, we don't think we can win right away with any of these other guys. We don't want to, take a year off because we're the Steelers. We want to contend again. Can you, one more year? Like, you played well, that might help persuade him. Like, if he feels really wanted by a franchise that he respects, that is going to be in the thick of things, and Tomlin's still back. Obviously, if they went 4-13 and Tomlin was fired, that probably would take him out of the conversation. But if it looks like Tomlin's coming back, it looks like they're at least going to be the same 9-10 win story. And, they're not ready with the draft pick to go take the reins right away. I could see a 2%, 5% chance. I mean, I don't think it's 100% chance in his favor of coming back, but I could certainly see it worth the conversation. And I'm younger than both you and Aaron Rodgers, and not yet a 4 in front of my age. And I can agree. There definitely are mornings where I wake up and it's like, or do I miss going out on a weekend? Am I fine at home on a weekend night? Yeah, like, it's different. So I could see that, but he does seem to be enjoying it nonetheless. Will Graves of the Associated Press, thanks for the time, man. You can read more about his reasoning for the Baseball Hall of Fame on his manifesto on his social media pages. That I do enjoy, though, because, again, with the other Hall of Fames, a lot of those voters, and maybe they're easier to get in, so why do they have to be so controversial? But there have been controversial selections. There have been guys that have had to wait. Shannon Sharp had to wait for years, and he's very popular in media, maybe until recently. He had all the numbers for his position, and yet it would just be a discussion by media. Why is he waiting? Should he have to wait? You never would hear a voter come out and say, well, this is why I didn't vote for the man who leads in this category in his position that doesn't have a criminal record. In baseball, we're getting a reasoning. I guess a reasoning's better than not a reasoning, even if you disagree with the votes. I do like that. There definitely have been times where I think the onus at times was on the Pro Football Hall of Fame to give a reasoning why T.O. had to keep on waiting. That was very contradictory. But I like that there's a reasoning here. So whether you like the reason or not, I like that there's a reasoning. Appreciate the time, Will. Happy holidays to you. I'm sure we'll be talking pretty soon. And again, maybe we'll have you back to discuss the results. I guess last, do you agree that the prediction? Do you think it's just Beltran?
I think it's Beltran
and Jones, and that's it
for those two and nobody else. I mean, and I'm not sure. I think there will be some guys that will be in the 50s, though. I think Felix Hernandez was going to see a surge in support, I would imagine, for sure. And then, I have not. It's still pretty early. I think the great folks, Ryan Thibodeau and his crew, Adam Dorr, that track it as people like me release their votes. We're still only like 30, 35 into a group out of 350, 380, whatever it's going to be. So, but I would imagine that, the biggest gains, Felix Hernandez seems to be getting a fair amount of support. So I imagine maybe next year he'll be a little bit closer to election.
Yeah. And generally speaking, for anybody who wants to kind of now get obsessed and track those things, because I usually do, that maybe doesn't do it on a regular basis, as kind of Will's alluding to, and this is really true with the steroid guys, but it's even true with everybody. People always look at those projections. This is what happened with even Bonds and Clemens their last year. There were people writing stories of, they're going to get in. Look at the projections. Whatever the projection is, you got to take probably 15% off, because you got to.
I mean, like the motivated voters are going to be the ones that vote first, right? I mean,
right. But I mean, you can't live off what they're doing great work, but the caveat is whatever the final number is, for everyone, it'll be lower than the projection. Right. Like Griffey was projected to be 100%, and he ended up with with 3 people that didn't vote, and 2 of them we don't know. When you get into controversial situations, certainly on borderline guys, you're going to, unfortunately, those are the voters that don't release their ballot. So we're not going to really know. And it's just going to be down. It's going to be less. Everybody exclusively will be less. You're probably I haven't looked at it yet. I bet you the week before the announcement, you're going to see Beltran and Andrew Jones with projected percentages of over 80%. And I bet they both get in, but I could see one of them at least being below 80, even over the 75 bar. Probably. So it's going to be at least 5 to 10% lower than whatever it's projected to be released. But percentages do matter. I mean, you mentioned with Felix, if he gets over 50%, I think he's very much on the board for the next couple years. If he doesn't get over 50, I think there's a message that maybe he's not as much on the board. That there are kind of benchmarks to what these guys will do and where they'll end up. And this will be a never-ending debate here. But at least Will gives us the annual essay to give us his reasoning. And I'm sorry you're not getting the vitriol. I know your friends are, and Dan, to his credit,
he wanted the smoke. He asked for
and he's really doing the gift too, because there are many people that are talking back and forth. Like I actually got a message from the Burley voter who said it was a local vote, trying to explain himself to another media member. Dan is basically like, here it is, talking to no one.
Yep.
So like,
I know what he's reasoning. I'm not going to talk more.
He won't reply to anybody. We got national media members that maybe he's doing it privately, but he is he is not going further. So it's almost funny in a way. I think that's intentional. He wants to watch the world burn.
He's a big WWE guy, so this is a heel turn of all heel turns, and he's sort of leaning into it. It's sort of like the Undertaker. He doesn't talk. So that's just how it is.
Yeah, well, maybe eventually a decade from now he'll start talking, because Undertaker's now talking, has a podcast. Maybe he'll here's what I wanted to say, and I didn't give it to you. Will Graves of the Associated Press. Appreciate it, man.
All right, take care, bud.
Yep. That was Will Graves of the Associated Press. We do it every year, talking his Hall of Fame ballot, and Will did what I think is going to happen. Andrew Jones, Carlos Beltran, that's it. We can debate the steroid guys all day, but if you leave them aside, it's probably just those two. There are others that are borderline guys that can be debated. And I don't love Dan's, his colleague with the Associated Press in Philadelphia, others that just want to vote local guys or kind of let the world burn in front of them or do it a heel turn. But, maybe it can be funny because that's clearly what's going on with some of these votes. And I think we're now in a scenario where Tomlin's coming back, maybe Rodgers coming back, maybe it's on the board, even if it's still a very, very low percentage. And maybe for his legacy, why not mess it up if you can go out on a high note? And maybe this is even freaking the year that Tomlin wins a playoff game. Hasn't happened since 2016, but the AFC is wide open this year, to say the very, very least. That'll do it for this edition of Mic Drop, made possible by the Believe Network, available everywhere you get your podcasts, and of course on Sirius XM.